Welcome back. I put out the question the other day, what kind of tech stuff do you want to see? And somebody responded with how to start a carbureted vehicle. Something I hadn't really considered. But the reality is, fuel-injected vehicles have been common for the last 30 years or so. Really longer than that. So even somebody my age may not know how to actually start and drive a carbureted vehicle. So I've got this old truck sitting here today. It hasn't been started in about 20 hours. The sun's out, it's a beautiful day, but it is still, I think it's probably about 35 right now. It was in the mid to high 20s overnight. And we'll kind of go over what you need to think about when you're starting a vehicle. The short answer here is different vehicles are going to start differently. So this isn't a one-size-fits-all type of tutorial. But I will go over what's happening while you are trying to start this. And to do that, I'm going to have to get you under the hood first. I've already got the air cleaner off. We'll move in and take a look at the carburetor, which is what you're going to deal with. First of all, I will say that the choke, which is this plate right here, is not really properly adjusted on this carburetor. There's really kind of three different styles of choke that you're going to run into. This one right here with two wires running to it, this is an electric choke. Inside of here is a heating element and a bimetallic spring, and it controls this choke plate on the top, and it's actually closed, so it may work properly. When this gets cold, it causes this choke to close. Another style would basically have a cable. Instead of this electric piece, it has a cable that runs back inside the vehicle, and you have to manually control it. So that would be a manual choke. When an engine is cold, it requires a richer air-fuel mixture. That means we need to get more fuel in with the same amount of air. So in order to do that, in the carburetor days, what we do is we close this choke plate off, and it limits the amount of air that runs through the primary barrels of the carburetor. The other thing that happens is you may have heard of somebody pumping the gas on a carburetor. And if I hold this open, I'm going to work the gas, and you should be able to see two streams of fuel shoot out of those little brass pieces there. Okay? Now, when you pump the gas, you shoot raw fuel directly down into the intake manifold, so as the engine cranks over, it picks some of that up, and it helps light it off. The other thing that happens, and I stopped it from doing this, is when you pump the gas, it actually allows the choke to set, which this one's not going to do. I had to close it by hand, but it allows the choke to set. That also, which you didn't see because I was in the way, raises you to the high idle setting of the carburetor. I pumped this one twice. It should fire up. So let's go inside and see what it does. Now, I did this under the hood before we got in here, but essentially what I just did is pumped this gas pedal 2 or 3 times. How many times is that going to take for your vehicle? It varies from car to car. Some of them like 1 pump, some of them like 10. You'll just have to figure that out. This is only on cold start. You shouldn't have to pump a carbureted vehicle after it's been running. So let's see what it does after those 2 pumps. Okay, it immediately started. Because it's on the high idle cam, it's idling at just a little under 2,000 RPM. So here's another pretty major difference between a modern fuel-injected car and a carbureted vehicle. A modern fuel-injected car, you turn the key, you can put it into gear, and the computer is taking care of all the fuel metering and everything, and it runs pretty much flawlessly right from the start. With an old carbureted vehicle, you actually have to let it warm up a little bit. As I've been sitting here talking to you, my idle speed has gone up from about 1900 RPM. Now we're up closer to 25. So the idle speed has come up. The engine is warming up. It's getting better at running. To unset the choke, once the engine's kind of warmed up a little bit, the idle is stabilized, the choke is probably actually pulled off out there. All I'm going to do is flip the throttle. It came down off the high idle. And there we are down at our normal idle speed, which is a little bit higher than it should be, but we're at about 1,000 RPM. This truck really still isn't ready to drive yet. Warming up your vehicle really came from the old carbureted days when you had to. If I just put this in gear right now, it could very well stall. Or if I go out and try to drive down the road, it might spit and sputter and act up until it's warmed up. So every engine is going to respond a little bit differently. I do have one manual choke vehicle here right now, and it's a little bit different. So we'll go in and take a look at that. So now we're going to take a look at this old Ford tractor. One of the first things you want to do when you're starting something like this is make sure that the shifter is in neutral if it's a manual transmission. This one is. So here is the choke cable. This is going to be not quite as bad because it has been inside for the night. However, it's only about 50 degrees in this building. So what we'll do when we start this one, this does not have an accelerator pump in the carburetor, so pumping the throttle on this does nothing. But we will give it just a little bit of throttle, somewhere around there from experience. And again, this is kind of experience base. This tractor is still going to require choke. That's full choke. If you push it about halfway in, that's half choke. This one's probably going to want right about there, which will be 3/4 choke. When it starts, I'll have to slowly push that back in. Every vehicle is a little bit different, and this is no exception. So it does require a fair amount of choke, even though it's relatively warm in here. Okay, didn't start. Let's give it, actually that was full choke, so let's back it off a little bit. Because it's fairly warm in here, this tractor started and has moved on to an idle position without choke very quickly. If it were a little bit cooler, I would have to run the choke a little bit longer. So it's kind of, again, it's by vehicle. I can't say this is how you start every carbureted vehicle. They're a little bit different. Alright, so that was the cold start. How about if the engine is already warmed up? I've left this running for quite a while, and it is up to pretty much operating temperature. This again is going to be somewhat vehicle by vehicle. That Mustang that I've done a bunch of work on with the 351 Cleveland, it really liked it if you gave it about 1/4 throttle and then cranked it over when it was hot. That allowed a little bit more air and fuel to enter the cylinders to get it to light off and take off. This truck should start just simply by turning the key after it's warmed up. I haven't tried it in a while, but that's what should happen. Alright, so all I should have to do here, and that started great. This truck just started quicker than any of the fuel injected stuff I've ever seen. And if you've got a properly tuned carburetor, it does light off almost immediately. So this one started great right there. If it gets real hot, it might not start as well. So again, like most of my videos, I'm not going to say every single one is exactly like what I just showed you, but I did show you some of the theory behind it, how they kind of work, and a little bit on how you're going to start it. You'll have to actually learn what each vehicle is like that you're driving. A totally stock carbureted vehicle starts and runs quite well. You do still need to let it warm up. That's all I can think of about starting a carbureted vehicle right now. So if you want to see anything different, go ahead, make a comment here. I'll try to get to it. Like I said, this is something that a viewer wanted to see. So here we are. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you again soon.